8 months into the war, the galaxy had become a battlefield unlike anything in recorded history. The Varathi spread across Council space like a plague, attacking colonies, ambushing trade routes, and hunting any ships they encountered. They weren't conquering territory. They were hunting for sport, testing their prey to see who would provide the best challenge. Fleet Admiral Wu Jin commanded the human armada from the Bridge of the Indomitable, humanity's largest warship. The holographic display before him showed 17 different battle zones across 3 sectors. Every single one needed reinforcements. Every single one was desperate. "Send the 7th Fleet to Sector 12, he ordered after reviewing the tactical data. "Tell the 4th to hold position at Sector 9. "They're on their own for now." His aide looked troubled. "Sir, the 4th only has 8 ships left." "If the Varathi hit them again, then they'll fight with 8 ships, Wu Jin interrupted. "I don't have reinforcements to send. Every vessel we have is already engaged. This is war. Sometimes you have to make impossible choices." The aide nodded and relayed the orders. Wu Jin turned back to the displays, his face showing the exhaustion of 8 months of constant combat. He had aged years in these months. They all had. In a research facility hidden deep within human territory, combat specialist Mi-Sun studied the remains of a Varathi hunter that had been killed 3 weeks ago. It had taken 15 ships and 2,000 lives to bring down this single creature. Now she was determined to learn everything she could from its corpse. The Varathi biology was fascinating and terrifying. Their skin was layered with organic armor plates that could disperse energy weapon fire. Their muscles were dense enough to move through space by expelling gas from specialized organs. They could survive in vacuum indefinitely, go months without food, and heal from injuries that would kill most species. But Mi-Sun had found weaknesses. Every predator has weaknesses. They're sensitive to certain sonic frequencies, she explained to her team. "Watch what happens when I apply this signal." She activated a device that emitted a high-pitched sound. The dead Varathi's body actually twitched, its nervous system responding even in death. "Their hunting relies on perfect coordination and sensory input," Mi-Sun continued. "This frequency disrupts their inner ear equivalent. They can't orient themselves properly. They become dizzy, disoriented. It won't kill them, but it evens the odds." Her team immediately began developing weapons based on this principle. Within a week, every human ship was equipped with scream emitters. The weapons didn't destroy Varathi, but they made them vulnerable, and vulnerable was all humanity needed. On the occupied world of Taros 4, Resistance leader Yunha moved through the ruins of what used to be a thriving colony. The Varathi had taken this world 3 months ago, killing everyone who couldn't escape and using it as a hunting ground for their young. Yunha had stayed behind with 200 volunteers from 5 different species. They were civilians mostly, people with no military training who had learned to fight because the alternative was death. She had taught them everything she knew about guerrilla warfare. Lessons learned from Earth's bloody history. "Remember," she told her fighters before the next operation, "you can't match them in strength or speed. So you don't fight fair. You hit them when they're not looking. You use traps, explosives, anything that gives you an advantage. You make them afraid. Can they even feel fear?" One of the Thelian fighters asked. Yunha smiled grimly. "We're about to find out." They ambushed a group of 3 Varathi hunters using tactics the creatures had never encountered. Improvised explosives hidden in rubble, sniper positions in collapsed buildings, and a willingness to sacrifice themselves to take down the enemy. 2 of the hunters died in the explosions. The 3rd was wounded and retreated, the first time anyone had seen a Varathi run from a fight. When Yunha's team examined the dead hunters, they found something interesting. The creatures had been young, inexperienced. The Varathi were using occupied worlds to train their next generation. This information was sent to Fleet Admiral Wu Jin immediately. If the Varathi were training their young, that meant they expected this war to last. They weren't just hunting for sport anymore. They were preparing for a long campaign. The turning point came at the Battle of Crimson Nebula. Admiral Wu Jin led 200 human ships and 400 council vessels against the largest Varathi fleet ever assembled. Intelligence suggested over 500 hunters, including several of their most experienced and deadly. The Varathi were learning to coordinate in larger numbers, adapting their pack tactics to space warfare. They no longer attacked randomly. They used strategy, flanking maneuvers, and focused fire to overwhelm defenders. But humanity had been learning too. All ships, activate scream protocol on my mark, Wu Jin ordered as the Varathi fleet approached. Council vessels, focus all fire on disoriented targets. This is going to get messy. The battle began with a coordinated sonic assault. Every human ship activated their scream emitters simultaneously. The effect on the Varathi was immediate and dramatic. Their perfect formation fell apart as hundreds of hunters lost coordination, tumbling through space in confusion. The Council ships, following human tactical doctrine for the first time, poured concentrated fire into the disoriented hunters. The Varathi armor could resist dispersed attacks, but focused fire from multiple ships broke through. Hunters died in the dozens, but they adapted quickly, using their superior speed to break away from the sonic emissions. The battle became a brutal slugging match, ships and hunters mixing together in a chaotic melee. Wu Jin's tactical display showed losses mounting on both sides, but for every human ship destroyed, they were taking down 3 or 4 Varathi. The math was working in their favor. The battle raged for 14 hours. It was the longest single engagement of the war. When it finally ended, the battlefield was littered with debris. 89 human ships destroyed, 247 council vessels lost, 50,000 beings dead. But they had killed or scattered over 200 Varathi hunters. It was the greatest victory against the apex predators since the war began. In the aftermath, Wu Jin received a message directly from the Varathi Prime. The creature's clicking voice held something new. Respect. You bleed us humans. You fight as predators, not prey. This pleases us. The hunt grows worthy. Then came words that chilled Wu Jin to his core. We gather our full strength. We will test your homeworld. We will see if your den is as strong as your hunters. The transmission ended. Wu Jin immediately contacted Earth Command with the warning. The Varathi were coming for Earth itself. General Sung Min received the news in his office on the council station. For a moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of it. 8 months of war, thousands of ships destroyed, hundreds of thousands dead, and now the enemy was targeting humanity's homeworld. Then he pushed the emotion aside and started giving orders. Every human ship would return to defend Earth. Every weapon, every soldier, every resource. They would make their stand at humanity's birthplace. Across the galaxy, resistance cells like Yunha's continued their guerrilla campaigns on occupied worlds. Combat specialists like Misun worked desperately to find more Varathi weaknesses. Fleet commanders like Wu Jin planned the defense of Earth with the precision of masters. The Council species watched in awe and terror. These humans had transformed their peaceful civilization into a war machine. They had taught the Council's own species to fight, to kill, to sacrifice. They had shown what it took to survive against true predators. But the final test was coming. The Varathi were gathering their full strength, including the apex itself, the progenitor of their species. Intelligence suggested it was a creature of impossible size and power, ancient beyond measure. Humanity prepared for the fight of its existence. The question wasn't whether they would fight. Humans always fought. The question was whether fighting would be enough. The great hunt was reaching its climax. And soon the galaxy would learn whether humanity truly deserved to be called the apex predator, or if they were just another species waiting to be consumed. The research station Bright Hope never had a chance. It orbited a small moon near the edge of the outer veil, studying stellar phenomena. The facility housed 83 scientists from 6 different species. None of them survived. The attack happened so fast that the distress signal lasted only 4 seconds before it cut off. By the time Council security ships arrived 6 hours later, there was nothing left but debris and silence. General Sungmin watched the security footage recovered from a probe that had been recording automatically. The video showed the Varathi attack in horrifying detail. They came from nowhere, moving through space with impossible speed and grace. 12 massive creatures, each one a perfect killing machine. They tore through the station's hull as if it were paper. The facility's defensive systems tried to activate, but the Varathi moved too fast. Within 3 minutes, the station was destroyed. Within 5, every living being inside was dead. Freeze that frame, Sungmin ordered. The image paused on one of the Varathi hunters. It was enormous, easily 12 meters long, with 6 powerful limbs ending in claws that gleamed in the starlight. Its body was covered in thick armored plates that seemed to absorb energy weapon fire. But what struck Sungmin most were its eyes. They were intelligent. This wasn't a mindless beast. This was a thinking, calculating predator. Send this footage to every human military installation, he ordered. I want every soldier, every pilot, every gunner to see what we're facing. No surprises. In the council chamber, panic had replaced the usual calm debate. Speaker Veltros tried to maintain order, but representatives were shouting over each other, their fear overwhelming their diplomatic training. We must evacuate the border systems immediately. Where are our defense fleets? Why weren't we warned? This is humanity's fault. They disturbed the veil. The last accusation came from the Doranian ambassador, who pointed directly at Councillor Nari, the human representative. Nari stood calmly, waiting for the noise to die down. She was young for such an important position, but Ambassador Haiwan had trained her well. When Veltros finally restored order, Nari spoke clearly and firmly. The Varathi are not humanity's fault. They were your problem 800 years ago, and you chose to hide from them instead of solving the problem. Now they're everyone's problem. You can blame us if it makes you feel better, but that won't stop what's coming. We must negotiate, one ambassador insisted. Perhaps they can be reasoned with. They're predators, Nori replied. They don't want your territory or your resources. They want you. All of you. You're prey to them. You always have been. The chamber fell silent at those words. The council needs a military response, Nari continued. Your defense fleets are designed for pirates and accidents, not war. You have two choices. You can try to fight the Varathi with what you have and watch your species become extinct, or you can accept humanity's help. And what will that help cost us? Veltros asked quietly. Nari looked directly at him. Everything you have. Total military integration, shared resources, unified command structure, and most importantly, you follow our strategies and tactics. You invited us to the council because we're strong. Now you'll see why that strength was necessary. The vote took 3 hours. It passed almost unanimously. The council species that had resented humanity's aggressive expansion now begged for that same aggression to be turned against their true enemies. General Sung Min wasted no time. Within 24 hours, he had mobilized every human warship in council space. The fleet that gathered at the threshold station was impressive. 200 combat vessels, armed with humanity's most advanced weapons and crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for war. But Sung Min knew it wouldn't be enough. He had seen the footage. The Varathi were faster, stronger, and more durable than anything humanity had fought before. This would be the greatest test his species had ever faced. The first major battle came sooner than expected. 30 Varathi hunters attacked Threshold Station, a strategic waypoint that controlled access to 3 heavily populated systems. Admiral Wu Jin commanded the defense. He was a veteran of the corporate wars on Earth, a man who had learned tactics in real combat rather than simulations. He knew how to fight and he knew how to win, but he had never fought anything like this. All ships maintain formation Delta 7, he ordered as the Varathi approached. Wait for my command to fire. The hunters moved through space like sharks through water, their massive forms accelerating to incredible speeds. When they reached weapons range, Wu Jin gave the order. Fire everything. 200 cannons unleashed hell. Missiles streaked through the void. Energy beams cut across the darkness. The barrage was devastating, coordinated, and precise. It barely slowed the Varathi down. The creature's armor absorbed the energy weapons. Their speed let them dodge most of the missiles. The few hits that connected seemed to hurt them, but not enough. They kept coming. Break formation, Wu Jin ordered. All ships engage at will. Show these things what happens when they hunt humans. The battle became a chaotic mess. Human ships scattered, using their superior technology to maintain distance while pouring fire into the approaching hunters. But the Varathi were learning, adapting their tactics with frightening speed. One hunter latched onto a destroyer, its claws punching through the ship's armor. The vessel's crew activated emergency protocols, sealing the breached sections and flooding them with radiation that would kill most organic life. The Varathi tore through the bulkheads anyway. It moved through the ship like a ghost, hunting the crew through the corridors. When the captain realized conventional weapons weren't working, he made a terrible decision. All hands, abandon ship. I'm setting the reactor to overload. The evacuation pods launched just before the destroyer exploded. The blast vaporized the Varathi that had been inside, along with 2 others that were too close. 3 down, 27 to go. The battle raged for 14 hours. It was brutal, desperate, and unlike anything the Council had ever witnessed. Human ships used tactics that seemed reckless or even suicidal. They rammed the hunters when they ran out of ammunition. They sacrificed damaged vessels to save others. They fought with a ferocity that shocked both allies and enemies. General Sung-min watched from the command center, making split-second decisions that cost lives but saved more. When 5 ships were destroyed trying to protect a troop transport, he ordered the remaining vessels to fall back and lure the Varathi into a minefield they had laid at the battle's start. The explosion took out 16 hunters in a single moment. It was beautiful and terrible, a trap that only worked because humans were willing to sacrifice their own ships to make it convincing. The remaining Varathi withdrew, not because they were afraid, but because they had learned something important. These humans were different from the prey they remembered. These humans fought back with creativity, courage, and a willingness to die that made them dangerous. Admiral Wu Jin counted the cost. 89 ships destroyed, 5,000 crew members dead, but they had won. They had killed 23 Varathi hunters. Then came the message that changed everything. It was broadcast across every communication channel in Council space. The voice was strange, clicking and growling in ways that barely translated. I am the Varathi Prime. For 800 years, we have slept. We dreamed of the hunt, of prey worth chasing. The old council provided no challenge. They ran and hid, but you humans, you fight. You bleed us. You make this hunt worthy. General Sungmin listened with growing dread as the message continued. The barrier is broken. My hunters emerge from the veil. We will test every species in your council. We will learn who is prey and who is predator. And when we have taken your measure, the true hunt will begin. The transmission ended. Across human military installations, commanders checked their long-range sensors and felt their hearts sink. Hundreds of Varathi signatures were emerging from the veil, maybe thousands. The 30 that attacked Threshold Station were just a scouting party. Councillor Nari stood before the assembled council representatives that night. Their fear was palpable. These peaceful species had lived in safety for so long that they had forgotten what true danger felt like. We can fight them, she said. We can win. But only if we're willing to pay the price. War isn't clean or fair or civilized. It's brutal and bloody and it costs everything. Are you ready for that? The silence was her answer. They weren't ready, but they would have to become ready or they would all die. Humanity went to war against the apex predators of the galaxy, and the universe would watch to see who truly deserved that title. The exploration vessel Pathfinder moved silently through the darkness of the outer veil. Captain Yong-Su watched the sensor displays with intense focus. Every instinct told him they shouldn't be here, but humanity hadn't become a spacefaring power by following rules that didn't make sense. Captain, the Council sent another warning message, his communications officer reported. They're threatening to revoke our exploration permits if we don't turn back immediately. Noted and ignored, Yong-Su replied. Continue scanning. I want to know what they're so desperate to hide out here. The outer veil was a region of space the Council had declared forbidden 800 years ago. No ships were allowed to enter. No probes were sent in. No questions were answered about why. When human representatives asked for an explanation, they received vague responses about spatial anomalies and navigational hazards. Humans didn't accept vague responses. They investigated. Xenobiologist Subin worked in the science bay, analyzing the debris fields they had discovered. There were dozens of wrecked ships floating in the void, vessels from species she recognized from Council records. All of them were ancient, their hulls corroded by centuries of radiation exposure. But it was the damage patterns that made her blood run cold. Captain, you need to see this, she called over the comm system. Yong-Su arrived in the science bay within minutes. Subin displayed a holographic image of a wrecked ship's hull. The damage was unlike anything either of them had seen before. These aren't weapons impacts, Subin explained, highlighting the massive gouges torn through the metal. These are claw marks. Something biological did this. Something very large and very strong. The marks were deep, tearing through hull plating that could withstand direct hits from most modern weapons. Whatever made these gouges had incredible physical strength. How big are we talking? Yong-Su asked. Subin pulled up her calculations. Based on the spacing of the marks and the depth of penetration, I estimate the creature was at least 12 meters tall. Possibly larger. That's impossible. Nothing biological could survive in the vacuum of space. Tell that to whatever destroyed these ships. They found more wrecks as they penetrated deeper into the Veil. Hundreds of them, ships from every council species, all bearing the same terrible claw marks. Whatever had happened here, it had been a massacre on an unimaginable scale. The Pathfinder's sensors detected something ahead, a large structure floating in the darkness. As they approached, it resolved into a council archive station. It was damaged and derelict, but its power core still flickered with residual energy. "I'm detecting life support systems," the sensor officer reported. "Minimal but functional. The data core might still be intact." Yongsu made his decision quickly. "Prepare a boarding team. I want that data." Among the boarding team was Eldrin, a council historian who had secretly joined the mission. He was old, even by his species' long-lived standards. When the others asked why he had volunteered for this dangerous mission, he had simply said that some questions deserved answers. The truth was that Eldrin had spent his entire life researching the gaps in council history. He knew something terrible had happened 800 years ago. He knew the council had deliberately erased the records, and he knew that whatever secret they were hiding, it was important enough that they would break their own principles to keep it buried. The archive station's interior was dark and cold. The boarding team's lights cut through the shadows as they made their way to the data core. The station had been abandoned in a hurry. Equipment was scattered, doors left open, and in some places, there were marks on the walls that looked disturbingly like the claw marks from the wrecked ships. Eldrin connected his equipment to the data core and began the extraction process. It took hours to access the encrypted files, but finally the data began to flow. What he saw made his blood freeze. "I need to contact the captain immediately," he said quietly. Back on the Pathfinder, the senior officers gathered in the conference room as Eldrin presented his findings. The holographic display showed images and text from the recovered files. 800 years ago, the Council encountered a species called the Vorathi, Eldrin began. They came from a world with 3.5 times Earth's gravity. Evolution made them into perfect predators. They're massive, powerful, and can survive in the vacuum of space. Their skin is more durable than most ship armor. More images appeared showing creatures that looked like nightmares. 6-limbed, covered in thick armored plates, with claws that could tear through metal and intelligent eyes that suggested these weren't mindless beasts. The Council attempted peaceful contact, Eldrin continued. The Vorathi response was to consume an entire colony world. They saw other species not as potential allies but as prey. When the Council tried to defend themselves, the Vorathi treated it as a challenge. A hunt. Subin felt sick as she watched footage from the war. Vorathi hunters tearing through Council ships, moving through space with terrifying grace. They didn't need ships or weapons. They were the weapons. The war lasted 40 years, Eldrin said. Billions died. The Council tried everything, but they couldn't defeat the Vorathi in direct combat. These creatures were simply too powerful. So they did the only thing they could. They lured the Vorathi fleet into this region and collapsed an unstable star. The resulting radiation created a barrier that trapped the Vorathi inside the Veil. They didn't defeat them, Yongsu realized. They just locked them away. Exactly. And then the Council made a decision. They erased all records of the war from official history. They declared this region forbidden and never spoke of the Vorathi again. The reasoning was that knowledge of such a powerful enemy would destabilize their peaceful civilization. Fear would divide them. So they chose to forget, Subin said. They chose ignorance. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent alert from the sensor station. Captain, we're detecting massive power signatures throughout the Veil, the officer reported, his voice shaking. They're biological. Hundreds of them. And they're moving. Yongsu rushed to the bridge. The sensor display showed what looked like a swarm of giant creatures emerging from what appeared to be hibernation chambers built into asteroids. They were waking up. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, he ordered. Maximum priority. The response came back quickly and Admiral Daewon's face appeared on the screen. Report, Captain. Yongsu explained everything they had discovered. The ancient war, the Vorathi, the radiation barrier. Daewon listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. The radiation barrier is failing, Yongsu finished. 800 years of decay has weakened it. Our presence here, our ship's emissions, we might have accelerated the breakdown. The Vorathi are waking up. How many? Daewon asked. The sensor officer checked his readings. Current count is 300 and rising. Sir, these creatures are massive. Each one reads like a small ship on our sensors. Day one was silent for a moment, processing the information. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. Captain Young-Soo, maintain your position and continue monitoring. Do not engage. Do not attempt to communicate. Just watch and report. Understood, sir. And Captain, this information stays classified until I say otherwise. The Council kept this secret for 800 years. We need to understand why before we reveal what you found. The transmission ended. On the Pathfinder's bridge, the crew watched as more and more biological signatures appeared on their sensors. The Vorathi were waking from their forced hibernation, and they would be hungry. Subin stood beside Young-Soo, staring at the sensor display. We should leave. We should run as far and as fast as we can. We can't, Young-Soo replied. Someone needs to watch them. Someone needs to know when they break free. Because they will break free. It's just a matter of time. In the depths of the veil, something ancient and terrible stirred. The Vorathi had slept for 800 years, trapped by their prey's desperate trick. But they had never stopped being predators. They had only been waiting. Now they were awake. And soon they would hunt again. The galaxy had forgotten the terror of the Vorathi. That was a mistake humanity would help them remember. But by the time the Council understood what was coming, it might already be too late to prepare. The barrier was breaking. The apex predators were returning, and the peaceful civilization that had hidden from them for centuries was about to face the greatest test of its existence. 6 months had passed since humanity forced its way into the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was still trying to adjust. The humans didn't just join the Council. They exploded into it like a supernova, spreading across space faster than anyone thought possible. Commander Ji-Ho stood in the Human Intelligence Center on the Council station, studying the holographic display of Council space. Red dots marked new human outposts. Green lines showed trade routes, and blue markers indicated military installations. There were hundreds of them. What took other species decades to build, humans had accomplished in half a year. We're making people nervous, his assistant said, gesturing to a report from the Thelian ambassador. 5 species have formally complained about our expansion rate this week alone. Ji-Ho shrugged. They'll adjust. We're not breaking any laws. The Council Charter allows free trade and settlement in unclaimed regions. It's not our fault we're better at it than they are. That was the truth, though it was a truth that made many Council species uncomfortable. Humans worked differently. They didn't spend years in committee meetings debating every decision. They acted, adapted, and moved on. While other species carefully planned their moves, humans were already 3 steps ahead. Across the station in the Advanced Research Wing, scientist Bo-Ra examined a piece of Kavarian shield technology. The Kavarians had generously shared their knowledge with the new Council members, believing in the principles of cooperation and mutual growth. They probably regretted that decision now. Bo-Ra had taken their shield design and improved it. The human version was 30% more efficient, used less power, and could be manufactured for half the cost. Her team had done the same thing with propulsion systems, sensor arrays, and communication technology. Everything the Council shared, humans made better. It's not that we're smarter, Bo-Ra explained to her research team. We're just more desperate. These species have had thousands of years to perfect their technology slowly. We've only had a few decades in space. We had to learn fast or die. That urgency made us creative. Her words were true, but they didn't make the Council species feel any better. Many of them watched humanity's rapid advancement with growing concern. They had welcomed these newcomers, hoping to teach them, to guide them into civilization. Instead, the students were rapidly becoming the teachers. Ambassador Hei-Wan understood the political situation perfectly. She sat in the Council assembly, listening to another species complain about human military buildup. The Duranian representative was particularly upset about the Human Defense Network. This alliance violates the spirit of Council cooperation, the Duranian said. Ambassador Hei-Wan has convinced 12 smaller species to join a purely human-led military structure. This creates divisions within our unity. Hei-Wan stood calmly to respond. She had given this speech in different forms dozens of times now. The Council preaches unity and cooperation, she began. But unity without strength is just a pretty word. For 800 years you've maintained peace by hiding from threats. You declared the Outer Veil off-limits instead of exploring it. You tolerate pirate attacks because fighting back seems uncivilized. You've built a beautiful, peaceful civilization on a foundation of fear and avoidance. The council chamber stirred uncomfortably. HFY continued. The Human Defense Network exists because 12 species asked us for protection. They're tired of being raided by pirates while the council debates proper response procedures. In the last 6 months, our ships have stopped 17 attacks. How many did council security stop? 3. That's not a criticism. That's a fact. She let that sink in before finishing. We're not trying to divide the council. We're trying to strengthen it. Peace is wonderful. But peace without the ability to defend it is just waiting to be conquered. The Duranian sat down, unable to argue with the results. HFY's words stung because they were true. The council had grown soft over the centuries. They had forgotten how to fight because they never had to. Now these humans were reminding them of uncomfortable truths. But not everyone appreciated the reminder. That night, as Commander Jiho reviewed intelligence reports, he noticed something concerning. 5 council species had begun secret communications with each other. They were discussing ways to limit human influence. A vote was being organized to restrict humanity's military presence in council space. Jiho immediately contacted Captain Daewon, who was now an admiral commanding humanity's growing fleet. They're going to try to box us in, Jiho reported. They'll present it as safety concerns, but really they're scared of our power. Daewon considered this information carefully. When's the vote? Next week. Then we have time to make our position clear. The next day, Admiral Daewon issued a quiet order. All human military vessels were to withdraw from the 5 systems whose governments were organizing the vote against them. No explanations were given. The ships simply left. Within 3 days, 2 of those systems were attacked by pirates. The raids were brutal. Cargo vessels were stripped, stations were damaged, and dozens of civilians were killed. The Council security forces arrived too late, as always. On the 4th day, desperate messages arrived at the Human Defense Network headquarters. The planetary governors of both attacked systems were begging for human ships to return. They would vote against the restrictions. They would do anything. Just please send help. Daewon sent the ships back. The pirates were driven off quickly and efficiently. The message was clear. Human protection came with human presence. You couldn't have one without the other. When the vote finally happened the next week, it failed dramatically. Even the species who had organized it voted against their own proposal. The political reality was undeniable. The Council needed humanity more than humanity needed the Council, but this victory came with a price. The resentment grew deeper. More species began to see humans not as partners but as bullies. They were right to be concerned, but they were also trapped. The galaxy had changed, and there was no going back. Bora noticed the concerning readings first. She was reviewing long-range sensor data when she saw the anomalies in the outer veil. Strange energy signatures, movement patterns that didn't match natural phenomena. She filed a report, but it was marked as low priority. Everyone was too focused on the political tensions between humanity and the Council. The report sat unread in the system archives. If anyone had paid attention to it, they might have had more time to prepare for what was coming. But they were all too busy arguing about human expansion to notice the real threat stirring in the darkness. In the Council's central archive, an old security file sat sealed and forgotten. It was labeled Varathi Conflict, Historical Record, Classified. 800 years ago, someone had decided the galaxy was better off not knowing about certain things. That decision was about to cost them dearly. Ambassador HFY sat in her office late that night, reviewing the day's political victories. Humanity's position had never been stronger. They had wealth, military power, political influence, and the respect of many species. Some feared them, some resented them, but everyone acknowledged their importance. She should have felt satisfied. Instead, she felt uneasy. Everything had come too easily. They had pushed into the galaxy expecting resistance and found very little. These Council species had advanced technology and ancient knowledge, but they seemed almost helpless in practice. What had made them this way? What had they forgotten? HFY pulled up the Council's historical records, searching for answers. But there were gaps in the data, periods where information seemed deliberately missing. The largest gap was 800 years ago, right around the time the outer veil was declared forbidden. She made a note to investigate further. But like Bora's sensor report, this curiosity would have to wait. There were too many immediate issues demanding attention. Neither woman knew that their questions would soon be answered in the most terrible way possible. The galaxy was about to remember why the Council had chosen peace over strength, and humanity was about to learn that sometimes the monsters in the dark are real. The alarms screamed across the Galactic Council station like nothing the security teams had ever heard before. 12 massive ships appeared out of nowhere, breaking through the defensive perimeter as if it didn't exist. The vessels were ugly compared to the elegant Council ships. They looked like they were built for war, covered in weapons and armor plating that seemed excessive to the peaceful species watching in horror. Captain Day-Wan stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, his hands clasped behind his back. He watched the Council station growing larger on the main screen. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They had trained for this moment for 3 years. Every person on board knew exactly what they were doing. "Sir, we're receiving over 200 hailing requests," the communications officer reported. "They're demanding we identify ourselves and leave immediately." "Ignore them," Day-Wan said calmly. "Continue on approach vector. Ambassador Hay-Wan, are you ready?" In the diplomatic section of the ship, Ambassador Hai-Wan adjusted her formal jacket. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council would define their species for generations. She intended to make sure that definition showed strength. "I'm ready, Captain," she replied through the comm system. "Take us in." The Council station was enormous. It orbited a beautiful blue and green planet called Centrum Prime. The station itself looked like a crystal flower floating in space, with dozens of arms reaching out from a central hub. Millions of beings from 47 different species lived and worked there. It was the heart of galactic civilization, a place where species came together in peace and cooperation. For the last 800 years, no one had ever forced their way in. Until today, Speaker Veltros floated in the emergency council chamber, his crystalline body pulsing with agitated colors. He was old even by his species standards. He had led the council for 600 years and had never seen anything like this. Around him, representatives from dozens of species shouted and argued. "They must be expelled immediately," one ambassador demanded. "This is an act of war. We should destroy them before they can attack," another said, though his voice shook with uncertainty. The council had defense ships, but they were designed to protect against pirates and accidents, not military vessels like the ones approaching. "Please, everyone calm down," Veltros said, his voice resonating through the chamber. "We must handle this carefully. These humans have technology we don't understand. Their ships appeared without triggering any of our early warning systems. That should concern us greatly." On the main display, the human ships continued their approach. They moved in perfect formation, maintaining exact distances from each other. It was clear these weren't explorers or merchants. These were military vessels, and their crews knew what they were doing. "Incoming transmission," the Council's communication officer announced. "They're finally responding to our hails." "Put it through," Veltros said. Ambassador Hay-Wan's face appeared on every screen in the Council chamber. She looked directly at them with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Greetings, Galactic Council. I am Ambassador Hay-Wan, representing the United Earth Government. We are here to claim our seat among you." The chamber erupted in chaos. Veltros had to pulse bright red to get everyone's attention again. "Ambassador, this is not how membership works," he said, trying to keep his voice diplomatic. "There are procedures, applications, centuries of evaluation before—" "We're not interested in your procedures," Hay-Wan interrupted. "We know about the Council. We've been watching you for 5 years, ever since we detected your communication signals. We've learned your languages, studied your laws, and observed your politics. We know exactly how your system works. We also know it takes an average of 300 years for a new species to gain membership. Humanity doesn't have that kind of patience. This is outrageous," one of the council members shouted. "You can't simply demand entrance." "We're not demanding," Hay-Wan said. "We're informing. We have developed faster-than-light travel. We have advanced weapons technology. We have a unified planetary government. We meet all the technical requirements for council membership. The only thing we lack is your approval. We're here to expedite that process." Captain Day-Wan watched the conversation from his bridge. Everything was going according to plan. He had his orders, and he would follow them precisely. When the signal came from Hay-Wan, he nodded to his tactical officer. "Execute demonstration protocol." he said quietly. The Council's defensive grid was impressive by their standards. Hundreds of automated platforms surrounded the station, designed to intercept any threats. They were powered by quantum shields and armed with particle beams. No pirate ship had ever penetrated them. It took Day One's crew 14 minutes to disable every single platform without firing a shot. They used cyber warfare techniques the Council had never encountered. Human computers infiltrated the defensive network, shut down the safety protocols, and locked out all the override commands. One by one, the platforms went dark. The Council's security forces could only watch helplessly as their entire defensive system was neutralized. Veltros felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: fear. These humans had just demonstrated that they could destroy the Council station anytime they wanted. They had done it quietly, efficiently, and without causing any actual damage. It was a threat and a promise all at once. As you can see, Heywan continued, her voice still calm, we are capable of defending ourselves and contributing to Council security. We don't want conflict. We want cooperation. But we will have our seat at this table one way or another. The choice is yours. You can accept us peacefully or you can try to fight us. I promise you don't want the second option. The Council chamber was silent. Every representative understood what they were witnessing. A new species had arrived, and they were unlike anything the Council had dealt with before. These humans were aggressive, confident, and powerful. They played by different rules. Veltros made his decision. He had survived 600 years of leadership by knowing when to adapt. The Council will vote on emergency membership, he announced. All representatives, please register your decision. The vote took 10 minutes. It passed with a narrow majority. Many species voted against it, but enough recognized the reality of the situation. The humans were here, they were powerful, and refusing them would only create an enemy. When the results appeared, Heywan's smile finally reached her eyes. Thank you, Speaker Veltros. Humanity looks forward to a long and productive relationship with the Council. We have much to offer each other. She ended the transmission. On the defiant dawn, Captain Day One allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. Humanity had forced its way into galactic civilization in a single day. But as the human ships began docking procedures with the Council station, many of the Council representatives felt a growing concern. They had just admitted a predator species into their peaceful family. Only time would tell if that decision would save them or destroy them. In the diplomatic archives, a note was filed about humanity's entrance. It read simply, admitted under emergency provisions. Status, probationary. Threat assessment, unknown. Recommendation, close monitoring required. The galaxy would never be the same.